Well, Jessica Hronchek, I haven't seen you in a long time either.
I know, it's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Well, we are 4:45 on the nose, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for your flexibility with the timing of this. We're excited for this session. And if you don't know me, I'm Jessica Ronchek. I am your session moderator for this afternoon. Just a reminder, the session's being recorded, and thanks for keeping your mics on mute. We have chat available for questions you may have, and Rachel's going to give us a little more information later on how that's going to work. But I am very excited to introduce today's presentation, which is I've Got a Blank Space Baby, and our presenters, Rachel Minkin, Terry Miller, John Solaiji, and Erin Weller, and I will turn it over to them.
Thank you so much for hanging in until 4:45. We were having a little discussion about like, ooh, it's like an end of the day kind of thing. So the reason why we're together here, this actually, of course, started 2 years ago, not we were getting ready for a 2020 conference when we started talking about this. Our institutions have gone through a lot of physical changes, even prior to COVID. And so we wanted to talk to you about those changes and how we dealt with them. I wanted to talk about what drives changes to public spaces in academic libraries, and how do we plan for what we know is going to be an inevitable change. We know the space will change. So what do we do ahead of time? And then what happens when that change is outside of our control? So those are some of the bigger questions that we're going to address today. I will be watching the chat, and I see Tans and Michelle who are like, I don't know if we can promise liveliness. You don't have to promise me liveliness, but I am going to be watching that chat because we would love for you to be part of this conversation. So I have questions that I can feed, that we're going to feed in, and we're going to chit chat and all of that good stuff, but we want to hear you. So if you have a comment, go ahead and put it in the chat. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. And we're just going to try to feed that live into the presentation as we go. If things look like they're getting stale or not going anywhere, I've got some extra questions. So don't worry about that, all right? So be a part of the conversation, hop in at any time, give us some of your thoughts and some of your questions. So to get going, I have sort of a broad question that Terry and John and Erin have been contemplating, a big overarching question. How do we develop spaces for specific groups? And what are the challenges that you have seen? What challenges do you face in that process? Sherry, do you want to jump in first? Take a stab at it?
Sure. So I'm Terry Miller. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Associate Dean for Teaching, Learning, and Research Engagement at MSU. And a big part of my job is space. And when we first started thinking about this 2 years ago, I kind of had different ideas about what I would be talking about today. The biggest thing, we've been going through a lot of space transformations, and I was thinking about public spaces, right? So I know how do we attract the public, all of that. But since the pandemic, I've really been thinking about our staff spaces. And so my thoughts today are focused on a project that we have undertaken, and Eric Tans is involved with it. So to remake some of our public space. And so pre-pandemic, what I thought about was, our folks are in cubicles. We've spent a lot of money to make our public spaces really desirable for students and faculty, and they all come and they love the space and they want to be out there all day. But then our staff are in cubicles, shoved in basements and corners and poorly lit areas, and the HVAC is difficult. And what I was seeing before the pandemic is that I would walk around the building and see our staff sitting in public spaces because they hated their offices so much that they would rather sit in a public space than be in their own offices. So that was something that we needed to fix. We needed to focus. These are the folks that are in our building, 40 to 60 hours a week, depending on the week, and we need to treat our staff better. So thinking about that, thinking specifically about a really difficult area in our building that is a cube farm, and that about every 3 months, people wanted to move out of that space or move to a different cube in that space because they hated it so much. So So that was a huge driver for the project that we worked on. Another thing that's really driven a lot of thinking about space is accessibility across the library. We do that in public spaces. We think about things like not just adjustability, but heights of tables and chairs. So why aren't we doing that for our staff spaces? So thinking about not just adjustable height tables and adjustable height chairs, but thinking about different spaces within those staff spaces to allow them to work in a lot of different ways. Also, I've been thinking quite a lot about neurological differences. So when you think about people who prefer to work in light versus people who prefer to work in more of a dark situation, maybe seasonally, maybe you need sunlight. You live in Michigan, so you desperately need sunlight in January. But maybe in July, you're like, I kind of like a dark, cool cave to retreat to. So how can we think about all of those spaces to make our staff feel like they can be more productive during their workday? So I was thinking about that a lot and trying to think about the space, and then the pandemic hit, right? And so even more, we were thinking about staff spaces. So but then we were thinking about spreading out our staff, and how do we not have 40 staff crammed in a single room together, and the HVAC and spreading germs and all of those sorts of things. So, and then there's other considerations too. Now we're talking about hybrid meeting rooms post pandemic. So we have to have meeting rooms where people can go in and have a Zoom meeting and they won't disturb anybody else in their cubicle farm. So all of these spaces, really, we need to rethink our staff spaces to make them more productive. And as we bring staff back, there's a lot of questions like we've all been living in our homes for the last year and getting pretty cozy doing it too. So how do we get people back into the space? And they'll be like, I really miss sitting on my couch and doing this work, or I miss, just sort of that work-life balance. How can we recreate some of that? So quickly, I'm going to show something that we have done that is going to be installed next month in the library. We did this while everyone was out of the building. So it's going to be like Extreme Home Makeover Library Edition. And I am going to share my screen to show you our kind of before and after of what we're doing. And I literally, as the thing says here, I took a blank space. And let me put it in a view here. So this is an overview of a cube farm that we have in our building. It's still a cube farm. I'd like to say I wipe out cube farms. But instead, what we did was we reduced a huge number of the cubicles that were in that space. So we got rid of 12 cubicles total. We got rid of the ones that were most problematic, that people hated, that the HVAC blew down into and caused all kinds of noise problems and things like that. Instead, we created some different spaces. So you can see down below here, there's some, let's call it a living room space where people can go. This is right next to the mail room, or where the mailboxes are. So people can go sit in a comfortable chair, put their feet up on the coffee table, turn on a lamp, have a conversation, a little bit more restful than sitting in a cubicle. We have a couple of other spaces up here that are brand new. These used to be cubicle areas. They were horrible spaces. I still call it the cave. Now these are touchdown spaces. So we have 2 offices here where people who are working mostly remotely can just come in for the day. Maybe they're only going to be there for one day out of the week. Or people who are in cubicles can come to these spaces and make private phone calls, have Zoom meetings using their laptops, because these are floor to ceiling walls. So they'll be reservable for staff to use if they need that level of privacy. And then in this little back area, which you can barely see in this drawing here, it's again a small meeting space for 2 to 3 people. It's very dark, very cave-like. If you need to retreat somewhere to really kind of concentrate, think about a lower level of lighting. Maybe there's going to be floor lamps in there instead of having, that sort of blaring fluorescent lights or LED lights that we have that we can't control. This will give staff the ability to go into a space where they can control their light. And then over here, this is a beautiful space in our building that used to be filled with cubicles. It is now going to be a touchdown space. It overlooks the Beale Garden, the Red Cedar River. It is extremely sunny. Everyone likes a window. So now these are going to be open desks for people to go to where they can just work. If you are in a cubicle and you decide you need some sunlight that day, you can go over and sit down at those spaces, look over the river, get some work done. There's some screens that will divide you from a casual meeting space. So in this regard, we've given them a lot of options for using in this space. Seen a few questions.
Terry, there's
So-
a question about whether the touchdown spaces have doors. Are they also able to be closed off and private?
Yep. So the two that are here, these do have doors. One of the concerns, and I should go back, Eric Tanz was on this committee, but we did have a committee of the staff that work in this space to talk about what they loved and hated and needed in that space. And that was a really crucial part of this conversation. It wasn't just me like making stuff up, but they said, you know, the only way that we can have a phone call with a doctor or a private phone call with a spouse is we have to escape the cubicle and run to this stairwell and hang out in the stairwell. And there's like a folding chair out there and it's very sad. And so these spaces have doors, they're floor to ceiling walls, or they don't exist yet, but they will in about a month. So people can retreat into those rooms and have those private conversations that they don't want to broadcast, you know, what's going on with their dental health to the entire cubicle room. So yes, but the touchdown spaces over here won't have doors or walls. It's just an area where we'll have cabinets where people can lock their things up. Maybe they're only going to be in for a few hours that day and they just need a spot to kind of, you know, put their stuff and maybe sit for a few hours between meetings, and those spaces will be available too. And we will have a reservation system for all of that. So the next, sorry, I scrolled through that really fast. The next space was our blank space. So this used to be a blank space on our 4th floor, very close to the space that I just showed you. We actually saved a ton of money by just having an office company come in. They deconstructed those 12 cubicles in the other office and they are reconstructing them into this space. This space used to be a print journals room. It was just used for student study space in the past few years. It was very problematic. This is on the 4th floor. It's very far from any public service points. And we used to have a lot of trouble with fraternity study tables getting very rowdy up here. So we decided to reclaim the space for staff. And again, so we saved a lot of money by moving cubicles over here. These cubicles are smaller. We purposely cut the size of the cubicles so that we could provide space for other things. So kind of that living room feel. So you can adjust how you want to work. If you're sitting in a cubicle and you're tired of staring at the whatever 3.5 walls of your cubicle, you can move to this space here. There are some desks that overlook, again, a beautiful view of the river, outside, 4th floor. I guess you can look in the stadium from here. It's a gorgeous view. You can work there if you want. There are some comfy seats over here, a couch, a couple of chairs, a coffee table. You can sit and work there. There's a few tables where you can meet with another person and have, work together on something. And the people that are moving into this space, this is our teaching and learning unit, and some of our science liaisons are moving in here. They work together like this. They talk to each other. They're in conversation a lot, so that this space will hopefully help them to do that. We're also not closing it off, like the rest of the library can use this space as well. And then a few floor to ceiling offices for supervisors to be able to have conversations with their staff. And then in this top area, we have another very small office space. You can see it down here. It's just floor lamp, 2 very comfy chairs, a couple of laptop tables. So you can meet with another person, or you can be in that space kind of quiet, kind of dark, floor to ceiling walls, and allow you to kind of have lighting diversity. And then finally, this conference room over here, because we need conference room spaces. This one was near and dear to my heart because it is allowing people to both sit in a meeting and stand in a meeting. For people who have back injuries, who really need to do standing and not just sitting all the time, this allows them to stand in a meeting and not be awkwardly doing so. So this will be a fairly traditional, it'll have a Mondo pad on the wall mounted there for people to use. So this is my blank space. I'm filling it up, spreading out cubicles, but trying to give some diversity of space and light for people, for them to use to try to think about what workspaces should look like after our pandemic. So I'll leave it there because I went a long time.
We have some cheers for the lighting from Elizabeth and Fran. They really like the idea that your consideration of lighting in these spaces and the diversity of lighting, dark versus light or too bright, or even just in the course of the day, the moving through.
Yep.
Being able to control that. Sorry, I keep muting myself because my chainsaw guy, like not like murderous chainsaw guy, just regular chainsaw guy, like 2 doors down. So gets a little loud in here. I want to transition just a little bit since we're talking about blank spaces and filling. John had an entire blank space to fill. So John, would you like to speak about on what your work going through right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi again, everybody. My name is John Saleggi. I am the director of the library at Lansing Community College. And we're actually going through, just kind of completing the construction of the renovation of our building. The construction folks just left in March. So most of their work was during the pandemic. While we were working remotely, we for the most part are still working remotely. Our space will open to students in July. So we have it, we have the new space now, but it has, it's not been used by students yet. So, it's a pretty major renovation. As the director of facilities here has said, we've touched every part of the building. Our building is not a standalone library, it's a multi-use building. So IT has a bunch of offices in the building, and the radio station and TV station is in the basement. Our Center for Teaching Excellence is also in the building, as well as e-learning. Our computer lab's in the building as well, but that went through a major change from what it originally was. Our first floor of the building used to be a bunch of hallways pretty much, and the computer lab was down there, e-learning was down there, but it was all separate offices and a bunch of hallways. Well, they knocked out all of the walls on the first floor and many of the walls on the second floor as well. I believe the only walls, the internal walls still standing on those 2 floors are the bathroom walls. So it has been a major renovation and kind of a major change in how we do things too. Kind of the biggest thing being tutoring, which on campus here is also called the Learning Commons. So if I call it tutoring or the Learning Commons means the same thing. They're moving from a different building on campus over to this building as well. So not only will we have a renovated space, we will have new building mates that we will be working pretty intimately with. So that's a little bit about, I guess, the changes that have been taking place. Rachel, did you have any other questions, like specifically for now, that you would like me to address?
Well, I would love to hear, John, and then I'm going to get to Erin because I think Erin can address some of the same questions. But what challenges are you seeing, or do you foresee once you have students coming back in, or once everybody moves back in? I see. Oh, and then I see Jessica also asked, was that renovation motivated by any additional campus partners, or did this decision happen
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll answer
Sure.
Jessica's question first.
Yeah.
So yes, actually, that was the kind of the main driving factor for the renovation of the building was we wanted to make a one-stop shop kind of for academic support help. So the idea, and actually the library has kind of wanted to do this since the building was made over 20 years ago, is have it be a place where tutoring and the library and technology help for students all reside in the same place. And that was really the main driving factor for the renovation and for the big open, I guess, like the big open spaces that were kind of envisioned by both the college president and by the architects and the designers. So yes, I mean, I guess the short answer to that question is yes. I saw another question came up, which I can address too. And I guess the question in the chat is, how much input did the library staff have on the new design? I would say some. You know, so before I even worked in the library, it was back in 2012, the library staff put together a master plan for doing a renovation of the library space and of the building. At the time, the president of the college said, I have other projects I would like to work on right now. You know, we'll get back to doing renovation of this building. And it was about 2017 when we got back to doing that. And our former director, who has since retired, she, you know, presented that master plan to the executive leadership at our college and to the designers. I also was involved in collecting a bunch of data from students about what they would like to see in a new space. We did focus groups in tandem with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We included a lot of their programs, TRIO and the Cesar Chavez Learning Center, to get feedback from students. We also did a space study where I had student employees do tours every hour and see how students were using particularly the study rooms, how many students were in the study rooms, how they were using the space. Were they using technology? Was there 2 people, 4 people? What were their needs with study spaces? And so we gathered information like that. We also met with executive leadership as a staff, like at staff meetings, to collect feedback as well. We also had a library consultant come in to work with the designers, and we gave him, you know, a tour of our space and talked about our needs with him. So those were kind of some of the things we did to give our input on the design.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I do want to bring Erin in, because I think Erin's position in the MSU libraries offers an interesting partnership and counterpoint to Terry Miller. So Erin, would you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you've seen in space and why that matters to you? Like why is that something that you think about?
Okay, I am Erin Weller, Head of Access Services at MSU. And please forgive me if you hear tractors and pounding in the background, because I'm having a major home renovation done and I can hear the tractors now. So sorry about that. So yeah, I am in the circulation department, and we are in charge of safety and security of the building. So we handle a lot of issues that come up when it comes to patrons. And one thing in particular that's been a challenge for us is the space that we have dedicated for our children's nook. We have had this for many years in the library, and it's really beneficial to parents who, need to get some work done or studying done. They can come to the library, there's computers there, and then their children can sit and play. But the challenges that come with that is, there's quite a few. We've had issues where parents have left their children unattended, and we've had to go into the stacks and chase parents down and try to find them. We've had issues where parents are sitting right there and their children are screaming and throwing things and causing a ruckus, as children do. And so that's been a challenge because it's my staff that has to tackle those issues. We've moved that space several times in the library, trying to accommodate the needs, and also be respectful of other people studying in the library, but not only that, our staff. The place that it was before this one, it was right outside the circulation department, and one of the employees in my unit doesn't have children and did not like to hear the children all day long while he was trying to work. And so, that was a challenge, and just trying to make him comfortable in his workspace and yet still accommodate these parents and their children. So the place where it's landed now, I think, is probably the best that it's been so far. It's still not ideal, but it's down by our cafe area, which is a busier, louder section. It is a challenge for us because it is no longer right next to the circulation department. So we hear complaints and have to, travel to that section to deal with it. So, it's a great space. It's utilized a lot, but yeah, there are a lot of challenges with that. And if to dismantle it or get rid of it, I think we would have a lot of blowback. I don't think that would be the best solution. It's just, trying to find the right fit for it in our building. I think this one's okay. The space it's at right now, I think is, maybe the best. The administrative office might think otherwise because it's kind of right outside their space now. But it's better to be in the West Wing, which is our more noisy and group study space. So that's been a challenge. Another challenge, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the patron spaces that we've created and the challenges that have come along with that. Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think back in about fall of 2018, we started talking about a reflection room. We were noticing a lot of students laying out prayer rugs, or patrons, I guess I don't know for sure that they were students, patrons laying out prayer rugs and finding various corners and spots in the library. And it just became very evident that we needed a spot for them. And we were also approached by the Muslim Student Association and really talking about setting up a reflection space so these folks didn't have to just use a floor space wherever they could find it. And so, we had really good conversations back in 2018, and Terry really worked on this project with the Muslim students and creating a space. And we had it all laid out up on 4 West, and it was, excited. Everybody was gung-ho about it. And then the university came through and decided, well, let's do a master space plan. They wanted to see a strategic space plan. They weren't against the idea of the reflection room. They were supportive of it, but maybe just not where we were putting it, and wanted us to just think about the best space for that. So that was a challenge because we had all this momentum and excitement from the Muslim students, and then it was shut down, put on pause, I should say. And so that was really frustrating. And luckily, a new spot was approved. So that construction started, what was that, March 2020, I think? We started on 2 East. So now we have a nice reflection room, but unfortunately that space is closed to the public right now, so it cannot be utilized. But when we open the floor, we're just really hoping that it creates a safe, welcoming place for our patrons, and that it will be used. I think it'll be used heavily. And so that's exciting. So the challenges there, it's not just, what's going on in the library. You've got the bigger university coming in and making decisions about things. And, the library, like I said, it took a lot of flack and for that. And, we wanted to do it. We were trying. It just, things happen and we kind of just have to roll with it. So I'm excited that it's happening. And actually we had some prayer rugs donated from the Islamic Center. So we're partnering with, outside stakeholders on this. And I think it's going to be a really good space. But was a challenge to get it set up. Another challenge I'm a little bit worried about with it is just monitoring the use of it. It is out of our site. There are other service points on that floor, so I'm not extremely worried about it, but you just don't know what people get up to in certain corners of the library. So we're going to have to figure out how to monitor that, but trying to keep it, as freely open as possible. So that again will be another challenge that my team will have to deal with. I think the final thing I was going to discuss was, when we're approached by certain student groups to create a space for them, we have to think about the big picture. Just for example, we have a Cesar Chavez collection, and we had the Latinx students approach us and ask about a study space for them. They wanted to take over that area certain times of the week for certain hours and, just dedicate a space for Latinx students. And it was a great idea. And we just wanted to make sure, number one, we could accommodate them. But number two, we also kind of had to think about how are other groups going to feel about this? Are they going to, then want a space? Are we able to accommodate that? So far, we really haven't had any other groups come forward. But what was exciting about this, partnership is that we were able to do it pretty quickly and pretty cheaply. We just utilized that space that we had in the Cesar Chavez collection and moved some furniture around. And so one of the challenges, again, for my team was how are we to monitor this? How are we going to make sure that that it's just the Latinx students using it? Are we going to have to police that? And really, it was surprisingly easy. They just threw up a sign that said, during these hours, these days of the week, this space is reserved for this group. And it was pretty quiet. We haven't had to, kick anybody out of that space. It's worked really well. And the great thing about it is they were really happy. And, it was a cheap and easy way to make a lot of patrons happy. So I like those kind of plans. So those are just kind of some of the challenges that my staff face is kind of, the security of the building and just making sure that we can accommodate people, but also, just making sure that it's a good experience for all patrons and a lot of policing, I guess, that goes on. That's the biggest challenge, I think.
Thank you, Erin. I see Jessica has a hand up. Is that a question hand or is that a 5-minute hand?
It's a question hand. We still
Oh, a question hand, please, Jessica. Yes.
My dual role. Easier to say out loud, I think, than to type. I think this is a question for Erin or anyone else who was part of that conversation. As you describe your kind of 3 case studies, a theme that I'm pulling out is campus partnerships. And I was wondering if, with the instance of the parent-child space, were there campus partnership conversations that were a part of that helped leverage momentum around providing that service, or was that primarily a library driven? Because it struck me that the other 2 were coming from a really explicit need or request from students, and I was wondering if there was similar kind of formal partnerships for the parent-child space.
There was, Terry might have to say exactly what group it was, because I've been at the library since 2001, as a student worker, and I don't know exactly when that space came in. I know we had a lot of outside donations, but it might have been, do you remember, Terry, exactly what group was really pushing for that?
Yeah, and the office has changed names, but it was basically the, I think it's now called the Family Work-Life Office or something like that. But the initial organization was like student parents of MSU, and they partnered up with the Work-Life Balance Office and identified some money for the first one, brought it. It was before I was in my position that I'm currently at now, so it's been there for a number of years. And we thought at one point that it would just, with all of the training, the hardest part with those partnerships is that the person who brings the initiatives to you, they often leave. And then, there's this period where there's no one in charge, or, there's a transition, or maybe the person who gets the position isn't interested in, parents in the library services and things like that. So we had gone through a lull where there was nothing. And then one day, the new director showed up out of the blue. They had really considered it their space. They got quite a bit of money from the MSU Federal Credit Union to redo the space. And so they arrived on the scene with all kinds of new things, including one of those little Tyke's kitchen thing. Well, it's not little, it's a huge kitchen thing. And so we had gone from thinking, oh, well, this is about to go under, to holy cow, we got a whole bunch more stuff. And so yeah, I think the biggest problem with that partnership is just kind of maintaining that relationship with folks. It's not so hard with the Muslim Students Association. They're there. It's different people every year, but they're there. With the parent and work-life office, it's been much more difficult.
So a kind of a follow-up question for all of you. I think it's a good one from Julia. Where does this money come from? All of this requires some sort of funding. So who provides this funding for all of these changes?
Some of this is endowment money. So sometimes we just have some endowment money that that we can use to get things done. Some of this is I have to say my blank space plan this year was made possible with money that we didn't use for student workers. We're closed down. So our student budget was, I don't even know how small it was compared to a normal year, but we had money in the budget that wasn't going to go anywhere except for back to the university. So the problem with those is you've kind of have to have those plans like piled up in your head, because you can't just say, all right, it's March, let's make the change. So you have to really think about that. So the biggest thing for me is having a space plan. John talked about that, and we're trying to develop an overall space plan so that when these pockets of money are available, that you can kind of tackle parts of those space plans. But thinking creatively about how to redo space with no money is good too. I mean, we've got furniture around in the building that we can move around and kind of pilot things out with very, very little money. But that specific project I showed was definitely, it took advantage of budget situation this year we don't always get.
Just going to give a 5-minute warning quickly.
Now, John, for you, for your building renovation, did that money go back from 2012, or was that money that just the design had?
The money was from a bond proposal the college put forth, and that was from 2017, 2018. So the original 2012 plan was before that even. So, I mean, there was quite a few changes made to the original plan to meet budget, as well as just changing needs, so yeah, although we were able to take some things from 2012, that was not, like the only design elements we used. But yeah, fortunately, it was a college bond proposal, and people higher up the chain of command than me got to deal with that, you know, so.
I'm muted because of my chainsaw friend. I want to thank the three of you for being so open about the challenges and about all the changes and how to, like, where this is all coming from with your issues with space. I just want to stick a small plug in there because the reason why I'm interested in this is my desk is around the corner from Erin's desk. And we went through some crazy space stuff a few years back that it was Terry's fault, but and it was amazing to see how everybody, and I would say everybody, I mean librarians and staff, sort of got their frustrations out and then were able to channel some goodwill, like, you know, okay, this is for the good of the patron, for the good of the student, for the good of our public, and here's why this might work. And so I just want to put a plug in there for those of you who are undergoing space changes or looking forward to space changes, that building in some sort of what's the word I'm looking for, collaboration, but also just buy-in with the folks who are being affected is just, it goes a long way. It goes a long way for your staff and for your patrons. So that's my 2-second plug in there. We are just about at time, and I just wanted to open it up. Are there any other questions or concerns? Are there things you'd like to share about your spaces that you're currently working in or that your patrons are using or not using, as the case may be? You can unmute yourself and shout them out. You can put them in the chat. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not seeing anything. I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica for the final wrap up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our presenters. This was really, really interesting this afternoon. Thank you to all of our attendees for hanging on with us a little bit later into the evening. Just a quick reminder, you may have heard this once before, but if you look at the far right tab on the conference portal, you'll see an event surveys tab where you can provide some really valuable feedback to our presenters on how the presentation went today. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for more really great sessions. So thank you, everyone.